And then it's like, well, what does success look like to me, right? Is success money? Is success freedom? Is success like having more time with my family? Like, what is it? What do I want in life? And I think that changes throughout your life cycle, right? It's like when you're in your 20s, you're like, yeah, like I'm going to do what I need. Like you could be very career driven, and maybe that's where your focus is. And you have kids, and then maybe that's where your focus is. So it's like the success of an entrepreneur or any person can really change depending on where they are at in life.
Welcome back to another episode of High Value Discussions. On this episode, we have a guest who is redefining the beauty industry. My guest is the founder and CEO of Fox and Rose Salon in the heart of Los Gatos. As a visionary entrepreneur, she turned a passion for beauty into a business known for luxury, elegance, and unmatched service. But beyond her technical skills as a stylist, she is a true leader. She's built a business that is as much as creating a positive impact for her clients as it is about creating opportunities for others in the beauty space. Fox and Rose Salon has become a place where artistry meets innovation, and where every client leaves not just looking their best, but feeling their best. She has the unique ability to blend creativity with incredible business acumen, and she is here to share how she's done that, and the challenges she's overcome, and what it really takes to build a brand that stands out in a competitive market. Ladies and gentlemen, I give you Jennessa Van Kregten.
I grew up here in California, so mostly in the Santa Cruz and San Jose area. So my parents lived in a little town called Scotts Valley, but my grandparents lived in San Jose, and both my parents worked over the hills. So we did a lot of commuting back and forth, and definitely spent a lot of time in both locations. But growing up, my dad was a very entrepreneurial spirit, and my mom was very supportive of him. Both immigrants from two totally different cultures. So my dad was from the Netherlands, which is like a very different culture than where my mom was from, which is the Philippines. So it was very interesting watching growing up. And I think that my dad didn't take the traditional, like go to school, get a degree, and be successful route. He went a totally different route, and he did really well. But of course they preach to us like, oh, you've got to go to school. School is the way, right? Every immigrant parent is like, we came to America so you can go to school and you can get a degree and you can get a job and whatever. And when I think about it now, I think that I probably, I was a good student as far as like, I was always a very respectful student. When I look back, I think I probably had like undiagnosed ADHD or whatever it's called. And I guess it's pretty common for females, right? Because we don't have like what typically presents. And so I did okay in school. But later in life, fast forward, before I opened up my salon, I actually worked in a salon. At the time, I had a young daughter. So I had my daughter when I was 18 years old. Again, not the traditional route. Parents were probably a little shocked about that when that happened. And then it was kind of like, I had no idea, what I needed to do. I did all of the considerations. Being, Filipino, I considered going into nursing. That's like always the thing that they push you towards. I didn't do that. But I considered a few things, but I ended up having this part-time job at a hair salon, and I really enjoyed the environment. And with that being said, beyond just enjoying the environment, I really thrived in that environment. So I kind of started learning while I was there, but because my daughter was so young, I just needed a different job that had benefits. Yeah. So I ended up leaving that for a while, worked a few other different jobs, ended up finally working at UCSC for quite a while and enjoyed that. And actually, I do think that it was meant to be that way because I learned so much from being in that job. But I finally got to a point where I was working in the chancellor's business office as an assistant budget analyst. And my reports got so colorful because I just needed this like creative aspect of it. They didn't need to be colorful, but I was just like, that's what I needed. And I was going to work every day and I was telling one of my best friends, who was also my coworker, how much I hated going to work. And I was like saying this on repeat. And one day she said to me, she was like, I think you should quit. And she goes, because I love my job and you hate it here and you're making it miserable for me. And so then I was like, you're right. I need to quit. I need to do something else. And so then I, thought about, okay, well, do I get back into the hair industry? Because that's what I really loved. So I did. And I ended up even going back to the very first salon that I worked at when I was a receptionist, when my daughter was younger, and then started back there. So that's kind of how I ended up getting back into that. And then as far as opening my salon, that's a whole nother story. So what was interesting, and I guess what I didn't expect getting into our industry, which is probably led to kind of where I'm passionate about now with my salon and my leadership, is that the salons that I worked at, one of the things that I really needed was mentorship and direction. And I didn't really have that clear path. So, and also at the time, I feel like there was not a lot of commission style salons. So it was either like go to a commission salon that had you go through like a 2 or 3 year assistant program, and then eventually you could do hair. And because my daughter was young, I was like, oh my gosh, I can't afford to get paid minimum wage for 2 to 3 years. Like, I've got to catapult this. Or it was go to a salon where you could be an independent contractor and catapult a little bit faster, but you're not going to have as much education. You're not going to have as much mentorship. And it's going to be, there's a lot of things that they don't tell you about when you're doing that. So that was interesting because when I got into that role, I did well with that. But there were things like, for example, if you're a 1099, no one tells you, oh, and you've got to take care of all your taxes. So you're like, wow, I'm rolling in the dough. And then the end of the year comes and you're like, what? Like, I've got to pay how much money? So things like that. And I'm rambling, going off
please
topic,
go.
But I think the question was, how did I get to owning my salons? Okay, so this is the path. So we're getting there. So end up working at a salon in Willow Glen as a booth renter. Started off as an employee, but got paid as a 1099. So I wasn't really legally getting paid the right way at the time, but that was very accepted in our industry. So I think that the salon owner at that time thought she's doing the right thing. And then was very much like on my own. So it was probably right after the Great Recession where there were a lot of opportunities that started coming about. And at that time, I think I was like 33. My mom and dad had already passed away. So my mom had passed away when I was 30. And I kind of was like, what am I going to do here? Like, there's these opportunities where I could potentially open up a salon. It wasn't really on my radar to do quite yet. And I didn't have like any business plan structure in place. But the opportunities were just like too good to pass up, to say. It was kind of like the recession worked in my favor at that point. And so I was able to take over a salon in Los Gatos, and that's where my role as a salon owner started. I knew nothing about being an owner. It was probably the riskiest move I ever took. I remember that year, how crazy and hectic it was. And since then, my business model has changed like so many times over.
And it's so funny when people do start their own entity or their own ventures. It sounds very, very attractive when you're saying it out loud, but there's a lot of complications along the way by putting all the details together. What were some of the biggest challenges in the very beginning when you first were opening your salon?
Yeah, that is a great point. I think that there's a myth that business owners have a lot of freedom. And the truth is that you really don't. You have a lot less freedom. So there were quite a few challenges, I would say, coming through that. And when I first opened, I knew I wanted to be able to create a place that people love to work at, but I didn't know how to put in that mentorship piece in yet. So I actually didn't introduce that into my business until later. And again, when I first opened, I didn't have a business plan. So I took the easy route, which in hindsight, I'm not sure if it was necessarily the easier route, but I opened up as a booth rental salon. So I'm not sure if you're familiar with the different types of business models in our industry, but there's two main ones. There's actually three main ones right now. So there's the booth rental, which would be like a salon that has, however many stations, and they rent out each individual station. And then they have commission salon, which is what I am now, which is where you have employees and then you pay your employees a wage and commission. And then there's also now the suite owner, which is where you would rent an individual suite and then you would run your business out of the suite. So at the time, suite ownership wasn't a thing, but booth rental was, and that's where I had just come from. And because I didn't have a business plan, it just made sense to do it that way. And there were definitely some, there's pros and cons of every single one. I don't think any are better than the other. They're just all different. But one of the not so good things is that I didn't really have a mentorship program under that. And that shackled me as well into like what I could offer my team at the time.
You said it was one of the riskiest things you've done. And maybe was it risky for you because you felt like you didn't really have the accurate business acumen to be able to start something like that? Because I feel like the biggest objective is to start. It's just to simply start, and you learn along the way.
Yeah.
But it's kind of interesting when we're inside the venture and then we start to get educated along the way. We're like, I didn't know this. I didn't know that. It's all very overwhelming sometimes, but it's very interesting at how many things that you kind of have to put together and harness to be able to call yourself an entrepreneur and a business owner. And was it kind of interesting for you where you were like, wow, I didn't know a lot of things when it comes to my business acumen, but you can tell that now it's just fully enhanced?
Yeah, I think that when I say it was risky at the time, this is so awful, but like the risk that I was taking, I wasn't even scared about the business acumen. Like I was just like, wow, this is like, I'm taking whatever savings I have and I'm putting it into this. And I sure hope that it's not a really bad investment, right? And I lose everything, because I did know that most businesses, fell within the first 3 to 5 years. And so I was more concerned about that. And maybe there's something a little wrong with me where I feel like I must like to take risks or something, because I think that for like some people that I loved very much were like, this is not a good decision. Like you need to go to school and get a business degree before you do something like that. And I was just like, no, I can figure this out. I got this, right? I don't know if that's a good thing, but that
it's a great thing.
Probably
honestly.
helped me get through all of the hurdles. But it was one of the riskiest things I did, because, I was like, well, I have this young kid, and if I fail, like, what am I going to do? Right. And I figured, well, I'll just figure that out if that happens.
Were you always a risk taker?
That's a great question. I don't really think that I guess it depends on what it was. I think I did go through a time in my life where I was more risky than others. Yeah. But so I don't know. I guess it would depend on who you ask to say that. I feel like now I'm not so much of a risk taker. I'm more of like I do a lot more research before I take risks. Maybe there's more to lose now than there was, when I was younger. Yeah. So maybe a little.
The vibe that I get from you, it's you're more strategic in your approach when it comes to your risks. Like you said, you do a little bit more research before you execute on something. And how much research do you have to put into play before even executing on that task?
That's a great question. I think that it depends on what the task is. So what I have found is that, something that's really interesting is that our brains, we have this portion of our brain called the amygdala, right? So every time we experience something, it goes through our amygdala, which gives us an emotional response. So what I noticed for myself, and this is just like a me thing, is that if I'm having kind of like an extreme emotional response to something, I will actually take more time before I make a decision on that task or whatever it might be. Yeah. Whereas if I'm having less of an emotional response to it, then I feel like I can make a a quicker decision on certain things.
Yeah.
So to answer that question, it kind of just depends on what's going on.
I've spoken to a lot of entrepreneurs, and when you have a business and if you want to be able to sustain and grow a business, it's obviously having, like, say, high quality people inside of it. And some of the biggest hurdles that they have is the hiring, is bringing in the right people. What is probably some of the biggest hurdles for you? Is hiring, would you say, something fun that you like to do, or something that you're very, very calculated on?
That's a great question. So, this is an interesting question, because I will be totally honest. I think at one point I was horrendous at hiring. Like, I hired all the wrong people. And like I told you, I started off as a booth rental model. So when you're bringing on team members as a booth renter, you're not really hiring them. You are, in a way, you're getting into a contract with them and whatnot. But what I noticed about that model is that it was much harder to attract booth renters into your space. And that's actually one of the reasons why I thought about going into bringing employees on. We would get so many people coming into our door looking for an employee-based salon, and I had nothing to offer them. But finding the right booth renter was like pulling teeth. So with booth renters, they're independent contractors. They're going to be just as passionate as the business owner about like how they see their business. And so when you have so many of them, and I'm not saying, I think there is a way to bring independent contractors together and be able to lead that type of team. I didn't have the knowledge or know how to do that at the time. But what I found was that there was a lot of personality conflict as well as business conflict within the team. So then I kind of got into, okay, I'm going to start bringing on employees, training them, and creating a space for them where they can learn and continue to grow their business behind the chair. And again, I didn't know what I was doing when I was hiring. So I actually took a class, and I hired a coach on how to implement these new strategies into my salon. So when I did that, one of the biggest things that they taught us was to hire nice people. And so I did. I hired nice people. And then I found out that I actually have this awful flaw, which is I like everyone.
Yes.
Like, there's no one I mean, I shouldn't say there's no one. There's probably like, it's rare that I don't like someone when I meet them. And that always worked really well for me in life until I started hiring people. So that was the biggest thing, was learning, okay, like, what are you good at? Are you good at hiring? I actually was awful at it, because I would meet someone and there would be like all these flags, and I'd be like, oh, but they're nice. And I was told to hire nice people. You can like train them. Yeah. But there's really only some things that you can train people in. And there are some things you absolutely cannot train people in. So that's definitely something that I learned probably the hard way along the way. It was like years of learning that. And now we kind of have it a bit systematized. So I don't do all of the hiring, and I don't necessarily even make all the final decisions. Mm-hmm.
See, that's what I love about leadership too, is you're passing down those principles, those strategies, those skills into somebody else to be able to take on that role. So was that difficult in itself, like passing down that information to somebody else for them to execute? Because not only are you passing that information down, you also have to trust that that individual is making the right decision. So how long did that process take for you to be able to trust that whoever's hiring and bringing the people in, that you're like, yeah, I trust you made the right decision?
That took a little while, actually. I think that was a lot of internal work that I had to do. But when I first did that, I, at one point, it doesn't always work out. Nothing's perfect, right? It's kind of what happens, but you just learn your lessons. But we tried a few different ways to go about it. And I remember one time I had given one of my managers, the green light to like, go ahead and hire someone. This wasn't for a stylist, but this was for a front desk position. And she did all the hiring, and I got to meet some of the candidates, of course, and I usually do get to meet them at some point. So it's not like I don't have any say in it, but I really rely on their feedback. And so my top person was not a top candidate for for my managers, what she thought would be the right candidate. And so I said, okay. And so we ended up hiring the other one. And that time actually was awful. That girl was, and then I had to learn like, oh, actually I'm not awful at it. Like I do have like some smarts that I've learned along the way. And that was just because I had more experience than her.
Yeah.
It wasn't like that she, was totally off the mark, but I was picking up on some things that maybe she didn't pick up on, but only because I had probably like 10 more years experience of her. So I still trust, she's not with me anymore, but I still trust my team to make those decisions. And if there's something like we recently had an interview where my other manager was like, oh, she was great. She said, this girl said this, this, and this, and this. And I said, oh, okay, well, tell me more. She started telling me things and I was like, well, that doesn't make sense. And she was like, so let's be careful if we put this on the air or not, because I'm just going to get into it. I'm just going to tell you the story and you can decide whether you want to put this and maybe we like blur out some things. I don't know, maybe. So this girl came in, she wanted to interview for a front desk position. So a few things that I notice when somebody comes in to an interview is how are they showing up? Because they're going to give you their best foot forward during an interview. Yeah. We are a hair salon, so I expect that their hair is done. Hair was not done. Outfit was extremely casual, which we have a pretty relaxed dress code, but it was just a little bit more casual than I would like for an interview. And she didn't have her makeup done, which is okay. She's a beautiful girl. That's fine. But with all three of them, I just felt like, I felt one of them should be on there. And then, so that wasn't really even like the biggest thing. I could look past that stuff. But then she had said that she worked part-time at another salon. Yeah. And that salon, I actually happen to know the owner really well. And I admire that owner. That owner does very similar things to what I do. And she said that she left there only because they had part-time hours available and she wanted full-time. I said, okay. So I asked her, I said, well, where's she working now? And she said, oh, well, she quit there and she's not working anymore. And I said, oh, so she quit there because she needed more hours and she did not get a job after. And she said, no. And I said, oh, okay. I said, well, that's not really adding up for me. I feel like, I don't know, for me, like if I was working part-time and I wanted more hours, the last thing I would do was quit and not work for 3 months. So that didn't really add up to me. And then the other thing was that she asked her, she said, what would your employer say about you? That was the question in the interview. And she said something to the effect of like, well, they'd probably say I was late a lot, but that's just because I had a long commute. So people will actually be really honest in their interviews, and I appreciate that. It's rare that those things happen. I feel like more often it's the other way around where I like them too much, and so my team kind of puts me in check, or the way we actually have a very long hiring process. It's usually like anywhere from 2 to 4 interviews, and if they keep coming back, we're like, okay, they're interested in being here. Whereas when we get to the second portion, which is like a shadow day where they come in and they shadow the team, they're not really with me. They're with other people, and they tend to open up and say things. And so then my team will we have such a good culture that if it's something flaggy, they will bring it to my attention.
I get, I don't want to say criticized. It's like more like critiqued of like having high standards. Mm-hmm. And just like from that story that you told me, it's very refreshing because I love that you have standards. And I feel like that's why your salon is the way it is, because of the standards you brought. And I wanted to bring up this quote from Steve Jobs. Mm-hmm. He said, "The secret to my success is that we have gone to exceptional lengths to hire the best people."
One of the top standards I have is that I only want to work with career-driven people, meaning that if they're in it just because they need a job, this is not the place for them. But if they see themselves having a career, then that's the kind of person that I want to work with. Another thing that I want to see is when they come into our space, are they someone that elevates the team or do they bring the team down? And they say that, you're the average 5 people that you spend the most time with is your average, right? Yeah. And that includes work because you spend a lot of time with the people that you work with. But there's also a study, and I'm the worst when it comes to numbers, when it's like this statistic, like 70%, 20%, I'm awful at that. But I know that what the gist of the study was that if you have a high performer on your team, the energy from that high performer will make your whole team perform better. But if you have a low performer, it will make the energy of your whole entire team perform so low that they actually, like the high performer can't actually make your team perform any better anymore. It's like the worst thing ever is to have a low performer on your team. So I want to make sure that everyone on our team has something valuable to the rest of the team.
You know what's so funny? It reminds me of a story where I was renting out a room, and this was a very close friend of mine that I've known since third grade. He's pretty much like a really good brother to me. But I created my house as an environment to a place where I wouldn't want to leave. I have my library, I have my gym, I have my studios, I have my room. Like everything is set to the where I like it. And the people who come in here, it's like I have to have high standards there too. And if you're bringing that frequency down, you need to leave.
Like you could even be in public and having a good time, and like someone walks in and they're like upset about something, and it's just like, ugh, just like
chill.
Makes everything awful. And that happens, you know, that can happen anywhere, right?
Yeah.
So energy for sure is a very real thing. And I think that in our industry, we work so closely with people that energy is super important. So, and we've had that before. Like I have had, you know, like I said, when I was still learning my lessons, like we've had Eeyores on the team, right? They walk in and it's like, as soon as they walk in, it's, yes, like, oh, and they're always like, they always have like something wrong with their life.
I'm
and
tired.
yes, it's like they're kind of this victim mindset, right? Yeah. And even if nobody else thinks like them, like as soon as they walk in the door, it's like you can feel it. And so I remember like very clearly having people with that energy leave. And then it's like the next day, everyone's like, oh my gosh, it's so great in here. It's so nice, right? And so, and no one's, and it's not like anyone's like, that person's awful. They're not like talking badly or anything like that. But as soon as the person's gone, it's like, wow, I didn't realize how awful that person actually brought, you know, our team's energy down.
Have you noticed that? Because like, you know, we do spend a lot of time at work, but it's also like our outside life is a very big priority too within our environment. Have you made some calculations within your personal life to the point where you want to make sure there's no low frequency around you, because it almost ruins progression in every area around you?
Yeah, it is interesting. I am not someone who hangs out with a lot of people. I always say like, I don't have a ton of friends. It's not important for me to have so many friends. But the friends that I do hang out with, I want them to be people that bring some kind of like substance to my life. Like if there's someone that you're like, oh, I gotta hang out with that person.
Don't do it.
Then it's probably just not someone you want to hang out with, right? And they're probably not a bad person or whatever it might be, but for whatever reason you're like dreading that. So I have definitely become much more particular, especially when you are someone who has goals. Anybody who has goals, I would say, just say yes to the things that bring you closer to your goals, including having relationships with people that will help you move the needle forward. And not like in a selfish way, not, you know, you don't want to take from other people as well. Like if you're going to be hanging out with someone that you don't want to hang out with, like you're just going to not be good for each other. You know, both my parents passed away when I was fairly younger. So I think I was like 23 when my dad passed and then 30 when my mom passed. They were both pretty young, 60 and 61. And so I often think like, I mean, we never know. We're not guaranteed how many years we have left of life, but you definitely want to make each day count, right? And I think that there are times where, you know, sure, it's like you don't want to hang out with people that are going to bring your energy down. But I do think that sometimes if I meet someone who it's not necessarily that they know, let's see, how do I say this? Like they have the possibility to be a high functioning person, but maybe they're just like in a bad space temporarily. I won't be like, oh, I'm not going to hang out with them. Like I might be like, you know what? Maybe they need a little bit more, like, maybe I need to actually lean into them a little bit more. So I think that it just depends. But if there's someone who's, you know, like I said, an Eeyore, like they're never going to break out of it and that's just how they are, then yeah, maybe I'll distance myself from them, you know.
And not every single one of our people or surroundings need to be entrepreneurs and business owners. Like
No.
one of my best friends, I've known this guy since childhood. he's not an entrepreneur, he's not a business owner, but he's a hard worker, and he brings energy and love in the air, and he's just naturally funny.
Yeah.
Like, he's just one of those people that's just like, when you're in the room with him, he's just going to bring that light of it. And it's not to the point where we're talking about business or high frequency or this or that. It's like we're having a great time and we're just really loose. Like, those people too, I would say, is a very, very big priority. You don't need to sit with like these killers and all your tables. It's like,
Yeah.
it doesn't have to be with that.
That would probably be dangerous, to be honest. Like, put a whole bunch of entrepreneurs in one room, and it's like that's like the riskiest room you'll have.
Yeah.
No, I think it's nice to meet other entrepreneurs. I do love meeting other entrepreneurs and getting to know them and hearing what their story is. But just like, you're not better or not better if you're an entrepreneur, right?
Yeah.
But it doesn't matter what the person does for a job. It matters how they put one foot in front of the other each day.
You know how you were saying that your family growing up, like, they weren't very traditional, go to college, get a degree, etc. I feel like that there's sometimes that is very fulfilling to a lot of people. Like, say if they had a vision when they were growing up, like, I wanted to be this and I'm doing it and I'm able to provide for my family and we can go on vacations. I have time for them, this and that. And I get to specialize in my craft. That's very, very fulfilling. Like, sometimes that is good for people. Other people, sometimes they're just like, you know what? I don't want to chase that same routine where it's like, go to college, get a degree and pursue this and be stuck at that same place for as long as retirement. Sometimes it's, I think whatever makes you happy, I feel like that's what puts you to freedom. And I've felt like those people who are saying in their careers and they don't like it one bit, you can tell by their aura and, like, say, their face. The people who are like risk takers and entrepreneurs and business owners, you can tell it in their face if they're free or not. Like, you have a very uncommon glow to you, to the point where it's like, oh, I know when somebody's fulfilled or not. And you, since you're a risk taker, since you're a very strategic outlier, you can tell there's freedom there. And have you noticed that within yourself? Because a lot of headaches along the road, for sure. Sometimes you want to pull your hair and you're so confused. I'm like, oh my God, another problem. But at the end of the day, it's very nice to know that's like, wow, I'm a natural problem solver and I can get things done.
Yeah, that's a great question. I think that as an entrepreneur, it's like, or I mean, I don't know. How do I say this? Let me think. Something about running a business or leading a team or being an entrepreneur is that it is a bumpy ride. Like, I think that what's interesting is that when people see someone that's doing well in business, they see everything that they've accomplished. And because you've kind of gone through so many ups and downs, you tend to ride the wave pretty steady. But emotionally, you might be up and down. Like, it's a lot. Like, some days I'm like, I got this. I've gone through everything. I've gone through COVID to shut my business down for 9 months. Like, I can get through anything. And then some mornings I wake up and I'm just like, I don't know anything. I have no idea. What am I doing? I have no clue. And I think that that's probably more common. It's a common feeling that sneaks up a lot, right? Where you're just like, is this even the right thing? I don't know if this is right. And then it's like, well, what does success look like to me, right? Is success money? Is success freedom? Is success like having more time with my family? Like, what is it? What do I want in life? And I think that changes throughout your life cycle, right? It's like when you're in your 20s, you're like, yeah, like, I'm going to do what I need. Like, you could be very career driven, and maybe that's where your focus is. And you have kids, and then maybe that's where your focus is. So it's like the success of an entrepreneur or any person can really change depending on where they are at in life.
In people's view, say when they're watching you on social media or say on a stage, etc., they think everything is so sexy all the time. But every day, I feel like it's just a constant challenge.
I know that there's this movement of people being more authentic and showing like the bad side of things, which is true. It's like, it's not all like glamorous, especially in a hair. I think a hair salon looks so glamorous.
It's nice.
But when you're in it and you're working in the hair salon, like sometimes we'll have people apply and they're like, oh, I just want to work in this glamorous position, in this glamorous place. And then they start and they're like, this is not what I thought it was. Like, I thought I could just be cute and show up, right? And it's like, oh no, it's actually a little bit more grit than that. But I think that what's interesting is that when somebody's building their success, a lot of times is when people become aware of a successful person. What they don't realize is that they didn't start there. And if you go back, and now you can because of social media, but for pre-social media, you couldn't see what it looked like for them, right? It's like when they were just trying to figure it out and make it work. And it was definitely not always sexy or pretty, right? And there's still moments like that where it's rough.
I don't think it'll ever end either. I feel like when
Right.
you have something attached to your name, it's almost like you're asking for trouble.
Yeah.
But at the same time, it is very, very fulfilling putting those puzzles together. It's
Right.
very strange to the point where, you know how you were saying, like, what defines success for you? And I feel like putting tasks together, like solving problems is very, very fulfilling for me. Like, I
Yeah.
feel like I would say I deal with more problems than wins more often. And I
Right.
love waking up knowing this is annoying, but I'll get it done.
There are times when it's not rewarding. And I think that that's maybe the difference about how some entrepreneurs push through to success is that there are a lot of problems. And I think an entrepreneur will deal with more problems and accept the fact that they'll fail a lot of those problems more often than they necessarily have the win, right? So it's like, okay, like they're going to have 20 failures and one win. Whereas some people, it's like after 10 failures, maybe even after 3, they're like, oh, forget it. Whereas it's like, okay, this failed, this failed, this failed. And then like we have a sickness maybe where we're like, but there's a light at the end of the tunnel. Like I know eventually I'm going to win. It's almost like gambling. I'm not a gambler, but it kind of is like gambling, right? Where you're like, I will win eventually.
Yeah.
And I just want that one win.
Yeah.
And it depends on what that win is, right? Like how important is that? But I think that the more you can accept problems or failure and be okay with that, knowing that, you know, even though we try to fix things all the time, we won't always fix them. That's okay. You just have to try to fix the next problem. And
Yeah. I wanted to talk about a client's experience.
Mhm.
You know, when you bring in high quality people working under you, you want to make sure that each and every one of those people are bringing a high quality client experience.
Our brand is that we're an experience salon, right? So what's interesting is I think that a lot of people think of your brand as like the way your salon looks and what your logo is and the colors and things like that. And those things can have a play in your brand, but really what it is, it's how you make someone feel.
Yeah.
So what we want when a client, and it's not just what I want, because this is something that I think is important to every single team member on my team, is that when a client walks into our doors, we want them to feel like we were expecting them and that they're welcome. So if you were to walk in the salon, you know, and maybe another stylist or another team member was at the front, they would say hello to you as if you were their client, right? It's like everyone is our client that walks in the door, and that's so important. And I think that when you walk into any business, but especially a hair salon, right? It's like you're coming into the hair salon, your hair might not be done and you might not be feeling your best. And then you walk in and like all the stylists like have their hair done and they're all dressed up for work. It can be like intimidating, right? Where you're like, oh gosh, like I should have, you know, done my hair before I came
I
to
should
my
have showered.
yeah, people sometimes they will actually apologize. They'll be like, I'm sorry I didn't do my hair. And I'm like, apologize? Like you're here to get your hair done, right? And we don't want anyone to have that type of feeling, or we don't want them to feel anxious. So everything we do in our salon is to kind of built to calm those anxieties down of how a client might feel when they come in.
Oh.
So we want them to feel really welcomed when they come in. And then we want them to feel like every touch point of their service was important and made them feel good as well as valuable. There was like some value to that. Even if they're just coming in and having a consultation, we want them to leave feeling like, oh, wow, that was really valuable.
You know, having a service-based business too, you know, you hear this quote all the time in this saying that you cannot help everybody.
Any business that's service-based is going to sometimes attract the wrong client. And when I say the wrong client, it's just not a good fit. So there definitely are times where we've had to kind of navigate that and decline a service to a client. Most of the time it's pretty successful because we just wholeheartedly want the best for what that person, so each person that comes in, we want the best for them. So if they come in and they say, I want this particular service done, and maybe there's many reasons why maybe we wouldn't. Maybe their hair is not in a state that we can provide that service, or maybe, I don't know, maybe they're just maybe not a good fit for what that particular stylist does, because we have stylists that are very specialized in different niches. So say somebody sees somebody who's a cutting specialist and they want to go blonde. You know, they might say to them, hey, this is a beautiful look, but I want to make sure that you're getting the best person for the job. And this isn't really my specialty. So let me refer you to somebody else. And then there's, you know, some people that are just downright not nice. And I feel like it's so rare that happens. But when it does, it like makes a mark in your brain. Like you never forget that. It's very like traumatic, right? And then that is really where it can get a little bit complicated. And that's where I think that any leader in my salon and myself or any of my other leaders have to be really supportive to their team of like, okay, like how do we get you through this? Because this is really rough, you know? But yeah, it happens. It's like,
What I'm very curious about you is your leadership skills. Where was that taught? Were you reading books? Did you have a mentor? Did you have somebody by your side to kind of guide you into being the leader that you are today?
that's a great question. I can't say I don't think I was a natural leader, to be totally honest. I don't think they say there are people that are born natural leaders, and maybe it was. I don't know. I never took a test when I was younger. I have no idea. I am an older child, so maybe I have some leadership qualities to me, or older sister, I should say. I am an older child to this day, but I think that with leadership, it wasn't something I just knew how to do. I do not love to read books. I'm not a book reader. And I feel like everyone's always like, oh, the book that I'm reading. And I'm always like, I don't read books. You know, I sometimes will do an audiobook, but I'm just not a huge book reader. But I will read and research things all the time. And like I can hyper focus on something. So leadership was really interesting to me because what I realized was that that was lacking in my salon. I did have a coach who I hired specifically to help me with my salon business. And he had actually introduced to me Tony Robbins. I'm sure you've heard of Tony Robbins. Who hasn't heard of Tony Robbins, who I think is amazing. But they talk about like, are you a artist? Are you a leader? Are you a entrepreneur? Right. And I think that for whatever reason, I really leaned towards, I think we all have all of that in us, but I really leaned towards leader, where I was like really curious about this. And I think that part of me was so curious about it because it's something that I wanted to have in my life. Like I needed leadership. And what did that mean? And something that I was never good at was I wasn't really good at bossing people around. That just felt, and I thought that's what leadership was like, you know, cracking the whip and like, you got to do this and you go over there and like bossing people around. And anytime I was in an environment like that, I always saw that it didn't really work well like that. And so that did not come naturally to me. And so then I started learning about leadership just because I was curious, like, well, if I'm somebody who doesn't do well with conflict, like how do I have this conversation? Or how do you inspire people to want to do certain things without telling them what to do? And then one of the biggest things I learned was, you know, you can't manage people. You can only manage systems. And when I learned that, I was like, oh my God, I don't like really have systems in my business. And so we started implementing systems into our business. And then it became a lot more easier to be a leader because you were just like, okay, let's just manage the systems. If something's not working, it's probably the systems or it's leadership. So kind of looking at those two and like, how do those play together? So I love that anything that's also like psychology based or neuroscience, like things like that, right? Where you're like, oh, okay, so that's why we do that. And this is why I do that. And this is how things are perceived and whatnot, right? And I think that the biggest thing for me, and when I opened my salon, even as a booth rental, my biggest thing was I wanted a place that people wanted to love to work at. And that never changed. So that's still my number one thing is like, how do I make this a place that people want to work at? And as much as I want the experience for my clients, I know that my clients will not have a good experience if my team doesn't love working there. And so then that's always just my forefront of what I do, which I have to be careful about not people pleasing and just saying yes to everything either. But how can you still make a place that people love to work at with strong systems and good leadership?
It's funny because I invest in publicly traded companies, and before you invest in companies, you need to look at the CEO. You need to look at their traits. You need to look at their
Yeah.
principles and how they conduct and lead their team. And that's the vibe that I get off you. Like I feel like you run your salon like a publicly traded company.
I think that a lot of times it's like salons, we're a small business and we don't think of ourselves like a business, right? And I think there's a little bit of a gap between the fact that we do need to have some type of CEO in our business, whether it's the salon owner or somebody else. And if you can't do it because you're the creative and you just love being behind the chair, which I totally get, you need to find someone to put in your company to help lead your team and help be your CEO. It doesn't have to be you, but there needs to be someone if you want your business to scale.
Do you know who John Maxwell is?
I don't know.
He's a renowned like leadership expert
Okay.
and written so many books when it comes to leadership. And he had a quote, and I wanted to kind of like get your
Okay.
perspective on it. He said, "A leader is one who knows the way, goes the way, and shows the way. Leadership is influential, nothing more and nothing less." So you, as an experienced leader, how do you enhance that skill set today?
Well, I would tweak that a little bit, and I would say the leader does not always know the way, but they'll find a way,
Tell 'em.
find the answer for you. And I think that's the thing too, is like a lot of times people come to me and they're like, what should I do about this? And most of the time I have the answer. Every now and then I don't know. I said, I don't know, but let me look into that. Let me find the way. So I don't think a leader always knows the way, but I think they know how to find a way to get the answer.
Man, you just corrected John Maxwell. Shout out to you.
It's probably helpful that I don't know who he is. I am awful. Maybe I do know.
No,
So-
that's good though. That was
Okay.
probably a better response than that quote. I should throw that
Oh
quote
my
away.
God. So no, don't throw it away. It's a good quote. But okay, little side story, which I'm like side story girl. My husband always laughs at me. I'm like the kind of person that will meet like well, I don't meet a lot of famous people, but say I meet a famous person in the wild. Well, one, I don't recognize who they are, not because I like just don't like. And then I'll talk with them and have a normal conversation, and he'll be like, "Do you know who that was?" And I'm like, "No."
Yeah. Isn't that so funny?
Yeah.
Like-
So I'm awful with names. I'm awful with famous people. Like maybe I have heard of him before, but I don't remember. Yeah.
I'm like that with artists. Like say the music nowadays.
Oh, yeah.
I don't know. I don't pay attention. I don't know what they look like. I'm like, who's
Yeah.
that?
Thank God
Like,
for Spotify and Pandora, right?
and I actually have another quote from
Yeah.
him. And I want your perspective and your opinion on this one as well.
Right.
So John Maxwell said, people buy into the leader before they buy into the vision.
Okay. Say I have a vision, right? I could share that vision with someone, and I could tell 5 other people to share the same vision, and that person could hear the same story from 5 different people, but only really want to be led by one of those 5 people, right? Like you can give the same spiel, the same story, and it's going to be about probably energy and frequency of who that is. So I would agree with that. I would say that the vision should probably be shared by the leader, and whether they buy into that vision is really going to be like whether they trust the person to bring them there.
Something that I was telling you off air is that you have a very strong social media presence. And
you.
I'm seeing, like, say, a lot of business owners, they either use social media to their advantage or they just completely ignore it completely. When did you know that you needed to use this as a tool and not something to kind of take your attention away?
Yeah, that's a great question. I think that I was probably a little late to the social media game. I didn't grow up with it, and without giving my age away, it wasn't something that I really, had in. I'm a Gen Xer, right? So it's like a little bit of both, and I'm a young Gen Xer, so I've got like a little bit of like that Zennial thing going on. But I remember I had this girl working with me, and she was like, "Oh my God," she's like, "We got to get onto Facebook." And I was on Facebook, right? I wasn't like that dinosaurish that I didn't have a Facebook, but I was like, "Oh yeah, I'm on there." And she's like, "No, we got to post more about the salon and this and that and whatnot." And I was like, "Oh, okay." And so I was kind of like, we don't need that, But the world was changing, and it's like I saw that, oh, she was right. Like we do need to have more of that. So then I like took a class on how to like market, your business on Facebook, which as I was building my Facebook, it was like I was quickly learning that Facebook was not the place anymore, and it was Instagram, right? And so then hopped on there, and it was very time consuming, and it was definitely not easy to do. And at the time, actually, so fast forward a little bit later, had jumped onto Instagram. I also had another new team member at the time who was our front desk team member. And this is when I was still booth rental, but I was bringing on, just starting to bring on employees. So I was hybrid at the time. And she ended up actually being really great at Instagram. And she was like, we were talking, and she's like, maybe I can do this and do that. And she kind of started helping with that. And she now is no longer a front desk person, but she's actually my social media manager and also helps put together our education at the salon. And she's amazing. And so she's really taken over my salon account. She does all of our Fox and Rose Salon social media. Like, I wish I could take credit for it. It's not. It's her. You know what I mean? And we collaborate on what the brand looks like and what the vision looks like and all of that good stuff. But she's really the one that's putting it together, and I let her lead me in that way. So I think that's another important thing. So leaders need leaders because we don't know everything. So it's nice to have other leaders that are stronger than you help pave the way for movement.
Well, it's the same.
Company.
It's the same that goes for that quote that Steve Jobs said. They went to like very long lengths of hiring the best people, and being a leader is hiring people who are better skilled at a certain craft than you.
Right. Yeah.
That's probably the biggest objective here. Like, say, Bloomberg, CNBC, any newscast, when they are having, a production, they have like 10 or 12 people on the studio set. So somebody's dealing with the lights, somebody's dealing with the cameras, somebody's dealing with the audios, the cords, etc. So it's a very interesting thing where, like, down the road, I can't wait to have that. But it's also nice to be able to have that skill beforehand. That way I can teach it to somebody else.
Right.
But I like what you did where you leveraged your time and you're like, you know what? I love social media, but it's very, very time consuming. It's another business at the end of the day too.
Well, and I have 3 accounts, right? So it's like we've got the salon account, then I have my account, and then we have another one, which is our EDU account. Yeah. That's not even my personal. And then I have a personal one, which I neglect all the time. So I neglect my personal account. 100%.
Am I following the right one?
You're following the right one. Yeah. Yeah. There's not much going on in my personal account. Actually, it's kind of funny because I have this weird thing that's happened more recently where my business account is connecting to my personal Facebook. So every time I post, it just posts on my personal Facebook. And I tried to fix it, and I was like, forget it. Like, just like, my friends will either like my business stuff or not. And I'm not posting on there anyways, much personal. So whatever.
Why not?
I've just let it be. But I agree with you. I think that it can be a lot. It can be overwhelming. And I think that's something too that is really easy to let happen when you are in a leadership position or when you are building a business, is that it can be extremely overwhelming and it can feel extremely lonely as well. And so you do need to have people that can help you in other areas. If I hired everybody that was good at just cutting hair, then we would only be good at cutting hair. And when you have a business, it's not just one technical skill. It's like our front desk manager, she's amazing. It's like she does that job so well. It's like I'm just amazed by her at how well she does it. My social media manager, so good at that. Our blonding specialist, so good at blonding. Curly specialist, amazing at that. And it's really hard to be good at all of the things involved. And I think that what happens is when you try to do everything, something suffers. And I did that. I definitely did that at one point. And so for me, it's like really about, okay, if I'm feeling like something in a certain area is suffering, then I probably need to outsource for that.
Since you have outsourced so many tasks, what are, say, some of the biggest problems you have to deal with today?
That's a great question. I think that I still deal with all those problems just on a smaller level. So it's not like they're just completely gone. But now I'm not dealing with them on a daily basis, right? So it's not like I'm trying to answer the phones and make appointments and do hair and pay the bills and, market, right? So, for example, I have a marketing team, and it's like I meet with them regularly. Now when I do payroll for 16 people. It was different when I was doing payroll for like 3 people, right? 16 people is a lot. I can actually just spend a lot more and better focus time on those types of tasks. And then what's really cool is that as we're rolling out maybe a new service or new ideas, every time we add like one new service to the menu, like that sometimes is like 40 to 50 hours of work of getting it set up on the back end, finding out all the information, making sure you have the supplies, crossing all the boxes in the marketing funnel, everything. And it doesn't feel so overwhelming. So it's like, oh, okay, you can actually get that out in 2 weeks versus if I didn't have people delegated, it might have taken me like 6 months to roll something out.
How long have you been a business owner?
So I opened my salon in 2011. So a little over 14 years now.
Okay, so that's very, very impressive because like you know that stat where it's like, you know, people fail within their first year.
Mm-hmm.
So, you know, staying in business is a very big reward. But if somebody were to approach you and you were to guide them on to say, start a business, what's probably one of the untold realistic things that you would tell them that somebody didn't tell you?
I would say, one, don't go into it for the money because the profit margin on a salon is actually very little, especially in California, which that could be a whole nother podcast. But
Part two.
Profit margin is not large. So you're going to want to go into it because you have a different, bigger vision that's beyond money or profit. I would also say that if you are, say you're a stylist that like loves serving your clients or loves the craft of it, to know that if you do open a salon business, it will take away from that for a little bit. If not forever, if you don't delegate eventually, but you'll have less time doing your craft and you will have to put more time towards other things in order to keep your business afloat. So you can't neglect the business end and just do the craft. Because when I first got into it, I thought, I loved doing hair. And I still do, actually. I still really enjoy it. I only work behind the chair 1 day a week, but I still really enjoy it. But the work to actually run the business was so great that I do think at one point it probably made my work behind the chair suffer a little bit. Or my work behind the chair would make the business suffer a little bit. So you're just going to have to either decide if is it really about having the business or is it about something else?
And there's also something like, you said the number of how many years you've been in business. What are, say, some of the boxes that you haven't checked that you hope to have checked off?
My salon manager and we have salon owners that ask us questions all the time. And I love sharing the information. That takes a lot of time too. So we've been actually offering some coaching and things like that to leadership. I think that what's really interesting, and again, kind of tied back to how our world has changed even from when I opened the salon and like Facebook and Instagram and all that stuff, is that we're starting to be in more of a digital world. And I think that there's something beautiful about salon services where it's a very personal experience. Like you are with, a client and all of that good thing. But like people find stylists from, the other side of the country sometimes, or in another country or whatever it might be due to social media. So it's like, how can we create something that could be helpful to people beyond just, the 20-mile radius around our salon, right? So we're kind of stepping into more of that digital space, and I'm not totally sure what that looks like. But as I step into it, I have my team in mind as well. So I think that's going to be kind of the next thing that we move towards.
That's very interesting. Like when it comes to, say, like a digital product, say if you were running a tutorial on how to color or how to curl, and somebody's recording it with a high quality production camera, and that gets put into a little package, and then you can buy it digitally and watch it.
Right.
That's powerful. Maybe we won't even put that on the podcast so that nobody takes it.
I mean, there's enough business to go around. It's funny because I feel like at one point I would have been that person that would be like, don't tell anybody.
Like, no, shut this
off.
But
this is the thing. It's like, this is the truth. you could have 100 decisions and you could like, have you ever talked to someone who wants advice and you're like, oh, you could do this, this, and this. And you see like all their amazing potential and then they don't do anything.
Yeah.
Right.
Yes.
So it's like, sure, I can share. I mean, if somebody hears this and they're like, oh my God, I'm going to do it. And they're successful at it. All right. I helped
Great.
one person.
Awesome. Yes. Yeah.
Like, and if I can be successful at it too, great. We could both be successful. And I think that's something that's really common in our industry. It's not as bad now, but I remember when I first came, and this is part of too why I'm open to talking to other salon owners and sharing and kind of getting into like an education space for that, is because when I first opened up my salon, I remember trying to reach out to other salon owners and being like, oh, hi, I'm a new salon owner. You know, like, could we have coffee? Would you like to meet? We could share ideas. And they were like, no, like, you're not going to steal my secret recipe. And it was really heartbreaking and saddening because I was like, oh, I didn't realize like that they were so guarded about their business. And then I finally met one who ended up becoming my coach, who was like, oh yeah, I'll share with you. You know what I mean? And it was great. It was a beautiful relationship. And now I feel like I find more salon owners like that.
Yeah.
But we used to be like that, where it was like, oh, don't tell them about our promotion. And if you think about it, it's like, what's the population in this area? Again, I'm bad with numbers.
Yeah.
It's a lot, right? Like if every single person in the Bay Area came to my salon, that would be like one of the best problem ever to have, because we would not be able to serve them all. Yeah. So, and it could also be the worst problem to have, because it's like maybe our salon's not their vibe, right? So I just figure, yeah, just share it. I mean, if somebody wants to do what we're doing, good. We're all going to go about it a little bit differently.
Agreed. Like you can have, say, two people in a kitchen make the same dish, but one of them is going to bring different spices to the table.
Yeah, I think that you get what you give just in life in general. And so we have in our company, we try to do a triple win, right? So that's kind of like the basis, the foundation of how we make decisions. So it's like, well, how does this affect the client? How does it affect the team? And how does it affect the company? And I think that if it doesn't check all those boxes, then it's something we just don't do. Yeah. But then also just in life, it's like, okay, well, if I'm the only winner in this situation, like that's one, not cool. And why would anybody want to like work with me, right? It's like, I don't want to work with somebody who's just out for themselves. But yeah, I think that sharing information, like if we can lift each other up, the more we lift each other up, like just the better we'll be.
So I have some rapid fire questions for you.
Okay.
Are you ready?
Sure.
Let's do it. All right. So what is your entrepreneurial superpower? Vision, execution, or strategy?
Vision.
Vision?
Mm-hmm.
Gotcha.
I was probably a daydreamer as a kid, and I was like I would dream all the time. And my parents gave me so much shit for it too. Oh, am I allowed to swear?
Absolutely. You can say whatever you want.
So my parents gave me so much shit for that. They were like, oh, you're always daydreaming. You're always daydreaming, you know, kind of a thing. And it's true. I was always, and I didn't know it at the time, but like I was really just being like a little baby visionary, right? Of course, when you're young, you daydream like the silliest things. But now it's like I catch myself, and that's something I do now, where when I'm daydreaming, I'm really like envisioning something, right, for the future. And a lot of those daydreams have come true. So definitely visionary. Strategy, I love learning about strategy. I wouldn't say it's my superpower. And what was the other one?
The other one was execution.
Yeah. Like I said, undiagnosed ADHD. So I will execute. I will do it. But like I might do it at the last minute. You know what I mean? Like I will, like things will get done.
A client cancels last minute. Mm-hmm. Do you chill, create content, or dive into strategy mode?
Ooh, that's a great question. We have a system in place for that. So if a client were to cancel last minute, I would say, let's use our system. We would follow our system. And then what were the options? Chill,
create content, or dive into strategy mode?
Oh, ooh, that's a good one. It depends on the day. I might create content if I have the time. I might dive into strategy mode. I might just literally eat lunch in the hair salon. It's like, you're like, oh, I don't have a client.
Just do
like,
all of it.
Let me drink some water and have some food.
Biggest money mistake you ever made in business?
Oh, the biggest money mistake? Oh, the biggest one? Okay, let's see. There's probably
we can give three or five.
That's a lot. Okay, let me think. Now I have to go back into history of the biggest money mistake that I've made going into business. Probably not understanding how to have a budget for your business, right? That's something that I ended up learning a little bit later. I was just like making it up. I'm like, I had kind of, and I had some budgeting experience. It wasn't like awful, but not having, like right now, it's like, for example, I don't do any reordering in our business, but my manager has the reorder budget for her, right? Just having all of those done and knowing how and where to kind of like manipulate those when needed.
A book, quote, or lesson that changed your entire business mindset.
Oh, a book quote or lesson. Okay, I don't read, I told you very much. But okay, this is actually a very popular book that I feel like has helped both business-wise and personally. Do you know who Mel Robbins is?
I've heard that name before.
Okay, great.
It's going to bother me.
I know a name you don't know, which is really rare. So anyways, of course, I found her on Instagram. She has a book called Let Them. And the idea is and I think that when she learned this, it was really powerful for her. And it really made a lot of sense. It was just like, I think that when you're in business, there's a lot of things that you're managing. So you're trying to control a lot of things. And you really just can't control everything. And you definitely can't control people. So you kind of have to be in that let them mindset of like, okay, I mean, don't let people walk over you or anything awful, but like if you're worried maybe about what someone is thinking because you're making a business decision, or because, for example, everyone thought I shouldn't go into business. Like, you have no education. I don't even have a high school diploma, and I used to never talk about that. Now I don't really care because I know, you don't necessarily need that to do things, but people had thoughts about that. And so I wish I had learned that younger, to just let them and then just keep putting one foot in front of the other.
What's one thing about being a leader that no one warned you about?
That sometimes it can feel a little lonely. Yeah. So when you're in a leadership position, I think that a lot of times people may come to you with things that you have to just like hold forever. Like, they share things with you that maybe are personal or private. So then you have to really like hold that in. Or sometimes they'll share a conflict about maybe something or someone else in the salon. And again, you have to kind of hold that in. So I think that, unless there's somebody who has advice for me on that in leadership that I know of, but I mean, I can say that sometimes that feels lonely, right? Because then you're trying to solve this problem without bringing other people in to avoid it, to avoid sharing someone's thoughts or ideas that shouldn't be shared.
What's something you used to believe in business that you completely disagree with now?
Okay, I used to believe that there was a cap on success, and like almost like this invisible limited ceiling of what you can do. And I just do not believe that anymore.
Which do you trust more, your gut or your business plan?
My gut.
A lot of people ignore that for some odd reason.
Yeah.
I feel like I've been meeting a lot of people, and when I interview a lot of people, and I relate to them because sometimes I get that feeling in my gut, like something seems fishy, but let me see if it's right or not. So I make the mistake sometimes. It's interesting.
So yes, I wonder, okay, I was telling you about human design earlier. We need to look up what your human design is. Because there's actually something about these different 5 designs where 2 of them is like very much your gut that you have to follow. And it's funny because I say it so confidently now, like, oh, my gut instinct for sure, like that's it. But I ignored my gut instinct so many times, and that's how I learned that no, you've got to follow your gut instinct. Again, my gut back then, I wish I had listened to it. And it was like this person who I hired actually before I learned all the things, right? She said all the right things. It's like she knew how to talk and she knew how to say the right things. And there was something in my gut, but I was like, well, but she's saying this, right? And it's like, I didn't want to believe my gut or the actions sometimes. And so it's almost like the wolf in sheep's clothing. Is that what is it? How does the saying go? I have 2 immigrant parents. I say it wrong. Is it the wolf in
Wolves in sheep's clothing, yeah.
Okay, yes. So it's like the wolf in the sheep's clothing. And I think that I tend to be more optimistic like you as well. And I also think that sometimes, like when we're younger, depending on maybe our upbringing, we're really kind of taught not to listen to our gut, if that makes sense. It's like we're taught, nope, like those are the rules. Like you're doing that. And you're just like, okay. And you listen, right?
That's crazy.
It's so true. And then when you become an adult, you're like, still like, oh, I just gotta follow the rules and do the thing, even though my gut tells me no. So I think that that's really important to know, like, well, one, is this my gut telling me no, or am I just nervous to take action? Like, which one is it?
Biggest reward as a businesswoman that took years to earn?
Probably, okay, the biggest reward as a businesswoman that took years to earn. This is like a riddle. I'm gonna be really thoughtful about this, but I think that the biggest reward was to allow myself to be proud of myself. I think that as a business owner woman, I don't know if it matters if you're a man or a woman, but when you're in business, it's really easy to kind of be in that go, go, go energy, kind of like that hustle energy, which I think is important. But then sometimes you just stay in that because you think it's like the only way forward. And so allowing myself to realize that you don't have to be in that energy all the time, and allowing yourself to kind of step back and be in more of a receiving energy and letting yourself enjoy the fruits of your labor is probably the biggest reward I've given myself.
Yeah.
I may have an interesting perspective in that because I had my daughter before I started my business, and like my success, a lot of it was for her. And I think that a lot of people that have children, you know, like we want that success for our children, right? So that they maybe have opportunities that we weren't able to have or things like that. But at the same time, I would say my dad was very entrepreneurial and very much so like sacrificed for his business, probably too much in some ways, right? And my mom was very supportive of his sacrifice. I mean, I'm not going to speak for their marriage. I'm sure they had their own private conversations, but I think that it's important to find people that support you both ways. Like my husband's job, he's not home a lot. Like he sometimes is gone, 24 hours to 72 hours, like just depending on what's happening. But I'm totally okay with that. Like that's something that I'm okay with. And for his career, like that's really important to him. And then I have my career, which also can sometimes, like not leave a lot of room for our relationship as well. But we've just kind of been okay. Like we're both okay with that. Like we're pretty independent. Yeah. So I think probably it would just depend on the partner that you decide to be with, right? I think that a lot of the time we maybe have this idea of what our relationships are supposed to look like. And then sometimes when you find your person, it's actually a little bit different.
Yeah.
So,
yeah.
But I also think that might be slightly limited. You're right. Athletes, I do think like when you read about them, they want to be really good at one thing, that they practice that one thing all the time. However, I think that business is a little bit different, where when you find out what that one thing is that you're really good at, eventually you can have team members doing other things that maybe you're not so good at, and you can still find success in that.
Yeah.
And I know for me, what's really important at our salon is that we have a work-life balance. So it's like I want my team members to be able to come in, have a really great career behind the chair, and it's like they can go home and enjoy life however they see their life to be enjoyable, right? And I think that it's important for everyone, including the owner or the managers, to also have some work-life balance, right? So if you, it's like I have to kind of work on that too, where it's like, sure, I can get really easily, probably might have a little bit of a sickness where you're like, oh, I could hyper-focus on something and get really stuck into it. But then like, am I having that balance?
My problem is because I am a former professional athlete, and I still carry that trait of having that level of sacrifice.
Yeah. What was your sport?
Professional cage fighting, MMA fighting.
Oh, wow. Okay.
I was a fighter.
When did you start that?
15 years old. And I retired at 25 years old.
Okay.
So over 10 years of my life to combat sports.
Yeah.
Crazy.
So a lot of discipline.
Yeah.
Yeah. So I grew up, I was an ice skater.
Ooh, I love ice
So-
skating. I can go crazy on
Oh,
that.
really?
Yeah. Oh, yeah.
Yeah. All right. I'll have to take you out. My sister actually is an ice skating coach still.
Oh, that's
So
crazy.
she still does it. But that was also another very disciplined sport because it was like you were up, every morning, 4:30 on the ice, 5:15 before school, after school. My mom was Asian, so she also put us in all the extracurricular sports as well. And I think that discipline, like that's something that will be helpful for you in everything that you do.
Yeah.
Right. And then it's just going to be like the right mindset adjustments when you need them.
Yeah, agreed. So I want to be very, very respectful of your time. You've gave me so much value today, and I really, really appreciate your time. Are there any closing statements you'd like to give away for the podcast?
Well, I just want to say thanks for having me on your show. This has been fun.
Meeting you, it was funny. When we first talked on the phone setting this up, I think we've had like a 25, maybe 30-minute conversation. That alone was a podcast. And right away, I knew from that conversation, I was like, man, this is going to be a good one and a unique one. And it was. And, somebody who I hold very high dear to me, and Michelle Wheeler, she works under you. And she spoke very highly of you before even she started working under you. And a lot of this podcast is word of mouth on people who come on here. And I remember you asked to me when we were on the phone, like, Daniel, how do you go about bringing people on your show? And I said, a lot of it is word of mouth. A lot of it is research, but more of it is word of mouth. So Michelle is somebody that I have such high standards for. She's one of the most powerful and unique women I've ever met in my life. And then when she spoke about you, I was like, okay, there's something here. And I'm very, very grateful to even be able to capture this story and be able to put it out there. And I really, really thank you for your time.
Well, that's a compliment coming from Michelle. She's a very, you can tell she's very high achieving and a kind soul. And so I appreciate that. But yeah, I'm grateful that she connected us.
Thank you all for tuning in to today's episode. If you got a lot of value out of this, please do me a favor and support our channel by liking, commenting, and subscribing. Make sure to hit that follow button on Spotify to stay updated with our latest episodes. And if you are listening on Apple Podcasts, I would greatly appreciate it if you would leave a 5-star rating, followed by with a review. Again, thank you all for the support. Stay loving, stay hungry, and stay excellent.